I never really understood why it was cool to spit water, but he made it look cool.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing too, but I mean, he made it look cool. But in this era, I have to tell you, I did not enjoy, and I mean, did not enjoy him on camera. It felt like it was the same old thing for way too long. They called it the Reign of Terror. I just didn't enjoy it. So I was so excited for him to lose it to Batista. Looking back, I can appreciate, hey man, he was better than I gave him credit for at the time. And I feel like there's a lot of wrestlers who I feel that way about. I go back now and I watch stuff with Ravishing Rick Rude. I watch stuff with Bobby Eaton. I watch stuff with Arn Anderson. They were always on the program, but it's like, my tastes weren't refined. It's sort of like when I was a little kid, I'll never forget. We lived in Prattville. No, actually this was in Millbrook, and my parents lived in a cul-de-sac, and all their friends were over, on a weekend, Alabama night. And somehow they wound up, maybe it was 4th of July, and they were shooting off fireworks in the cul-de-sac or whatever. So my parents have some lawn chairs with other parents, and they're drinking some beer. So I said, I want a sip. And they gave me a sip. And of course, as a kid, everybody remembers your first sip of beer. Buddy, it's the worst shit you've ever put in your mouth. And then later, I find myself as an adult saying, damn, I'll have a Miller Lite. Let's watch Batista here.
You look badass, buddy.
He looks like a comic book hero.
Yeah.
And I guess he is. I mean, he's Drax these days on what's it called? Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that?
Right. Yeah. He was he was also on, not the last one, but one of the last ones.
James Bond things, right?
James Bond, he was one of the villains. And
he's done some really, really cool stuff. He is a hashtag dream chaser. I appreciate that he has always been a guy who's like, well, fuck it, I'm going to go do this now. And sometimes people want him to do something else, and he's like, nope, don't want to. Yeah. And I think that's really cool that he is allowed himself to take chances and risks. And he even talked about, once upon a time when he made a bunch of money and lived big here in wrestling, and he spent it. And afterwards, when he left, I mean, he even talked about before he got this role or that role, he was like thinking, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose the house. But he didn't want to go back to wrestling. He wanted to prove to himself that he could make it. And by God, he did. Yeah. I just love stories about guys who get out of their comfort zone, bet on themselves, and it pays off. He's a real success story for pro wrestling, and, became a multi-millionaire many, many times over. But still, when I think of John Cena, dude, and I know you're going to laugh at this, but I just don't think history remembers him this way yet, but they will. But there's a whole generation of wrestling fans who grew up with John Cena as their Hulk Hogan. Now, he wasn't first, so nobody will ever compare him to Hulk Hogan, really. But just when you think about the impact on little kids and the longevity, it was kind of Hogan-esque. He was the face of that place for a long, long time.
And he knew how to take that role and run with it.
Yes.
And that's important. I have a lot of respect for Batista because it takes a lot of self-confidence to be able to do what he's done.
Yeah,
it does. Self-confidence that I would have never had. And I've talked about this many times. The difference between me and JR has always been JR's confidence in what he does. How about Mike Chioda? Or Chioda?
Chioda. Yeah, he's our referee at the end of the month for Ric Flair's last match too. How about that?
That's great, man. Chioda's one of the best ever.
This match, by the way, got, according to the Observer, 2 3/4 stars. So they didn't love it.
Okay.
But boy, it sold all kinds of pay-per-views. I'll pull that up, but let's hear what JR's saying right now before they hook up.
The dirtiest player in the game, a 16-time world champion, Ric Flair, is at ringside. Nate. There he is. There's Nate. This.
Just to let you know, 980,000 people purchased this on pay-per-view. It was up from the prior year, which was 885. It would fall the next year to 930. And of course, in 2007, they would break it They had 1.18. In 2011, they would break that again, 1.12. Well, I guess that's not breaking it, but they did in 2012, 1.253. And then of course the network came around in 2014 and it was a whole new ball of wax.
Sure. Do you, I know you've heard the talk that the only reason that Triple H got his push because of his, because he married Stephanie.
Those are haters. I don't necessarily believe that.
Yeah. I don't buy that either. I thought Triple H had a great look, as we talked about. And listen, when he was Jean-Paul Levesque in WCW back then,
yeah,
he was a very good guy, was very personable, and I just knew he was going to be a big star back then. I really did.
I'll tell you what's not fair. And by the way, I'm not a Triple H fan.
Okay.
I want to be clear. I've had maybe 24 interactions with the real man in real life, and he's been fantastic every time. Goes out of his way to be nice.
Right.
I mean, a really cool guy. And I know that Bruce enjoys working with him, and everybody I know who has worked with him says nice things, but I'm just saying, as a wrestling character, he wasn't quote unquote one of my guys. Sure. But that's okay. There's lots of guys who weren't one of my guys, but I will say this. The knock on him was, he's only in that spot because he married Stephanie, or he politicked, blah, blah, blah. Buddy, who was successful in wrestling who didn't politic? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about long-term sustainable success. And you might say, well, Terry Funk. Okay. How long was Terry Funk a top guy in the modern era? He had a couple of really cool runs. If you want to hang your hat on 1989 NWA, okay. But how long was that? It was months. It wasn't years. Those are just facts. That's reality. But if you go down the line and you say, well, Austin was political. Well, Rock was political. Well, Hogan, give me a fucking break. He was political. Well, Flair, are you kidding? He was a booker half the time. Well, right. Dusty, hello. There is a pattern. It's one thing. Hulk Hogan once said, everybody says it's fake. It's a work. It's not a shoot. But as a shoot, the top guy makes the most money. Sounds pretty real to me. Ta-da.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that it's like Rick used to say in promos, being the man and staying the man are two different things.
Right.
Lots of guys got to say they were world champion. Doesn't mean necessarily they stayed world champion for a long time, kept that top spot and got the big paydays. Hunter did. Now, did he also wind up marrying the boss's daughter? Sure. But are we going to say that Will Austin was only successful because he married? Come on.
Yeah.